There we go. Hello, everyone. How are we all this evening? Hope we're well. Hope we're excited and raring to go. I know I am. Where am I? Let me find myself. Hang on a minute. So, hello and welcome to this week's Natural Gardening Live with me, Josie Rainbird, your natural gardening coach. So today we are talking about, what are we talking about today, people? We are talking about, can't even find my banner. Let's wing it, shall we? Today we're talking about seeds. So I have got for you the need to knows about seed sowing and how you can improve germination, ready for a successful spring. So this is what every gardener needs to know or would like to know. So let's carry on with that. Let me find myself. Perfect. So let me know in the comments. Are you new to seed sowing? Have you sown seeds before? Do you have no clue what to do with seeds, no confidence at all, usually buy plugs and go from there? Or do you sow seeds every year? Are they your go-to way of growing plants, especially vegetables and things throughout the year? Anyway, are you new or are you an existing seed sower? Let me know in the comments. I like to see kind of the ratio between who's in the group or who's watching today. So that'd be cool. Let me know in the comments. Where was I? So let me just sort my notes out. I will be there. So this is what I'm looking for. This is the first Natural Gardening Live that is being aired in the membership group as well, which is amazing. So if you're watching us from the membership, watching me from the membership, welcome, hello, thank you for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, because I see there's a few watching on YouTube today as well, which is nice. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you again for joining me. Hello, welcome, whatever. Do the YouTubey things of liking and subscribing to see more from myself. Green fingertips, Josie. See more videos and to support the channel, which is what we're here for. So now that's out of the way. Now I found my notes. Too many screens open, too many files and too many screens. So seeds. Why should you give seed sowing or seed growing? Why should you give growing from seed a chance? I can't talk today, it's dreadful. Why should you give growing from seed a chance over buying garden ready plants? So there are quite a lot of benefits behind sowing seeds over buying garden ready plants as well, which we'll go into in a minute. But yes, so I love growing from seed. It's my thing. I love it. And I always grow too much from seed as well, which is dreadful. And I'm probably not the only one that's guilty of that, but I do tend to get a bit overzealous when it comes to seed sowing. I do love it. So I love growing from seed. The process of seed sowing, growing and planting out from scratch is really rewarding. It's irrationally rewarding in my eyes. It's really rewarding and I love it. It makes my heart sing. It's just amazing. So I know it's a little bit cheesy to you. Might be. Let me know in the comments if you're the same. If you are the same as me and you feel this way about seed sowing and seeing the seeds come up, those seedlings, and then going right through to when you're planting the plants out, the feeling of the rewarding feeling that you get. Let me know if you're one of those as well. If it's just me. If I'm alone in this, then I'm just odd. It's fine. I live with it. So yes, I love seed sowing. So growing from seed also has a few very practical and rational reasons as well why you should give it a go. So I've got a few examples here for you as well. So for example, seeds cost a lot less. So this is the practical financial side of it. So seeds cost a lot less than they do garden ready plants and plugs. So you can get a lot more seeds in a packet than you can do in like a plug tray that you buy from like a garden centre or nursery or online. You can get a lot more seeds in a packet for a fraction of the price that the plants cost when you buy them as plants. That makes sense. It can be a really budget-friendly way of growing or starting your garden. If you're not very confident, there are quite a lot of easier to grow seeds as well. Some seeds can be coated with things and they can come in a tape form as well, making it just easier for you to sow them and grow them, and they will naturally be easier. They'll germinate faster and things. They treat them so they germinate faster. There are ways around it as well if you're not very confident, but they're an incredibly budget-friendly way of starting your garden each year. So I want to beat my watch on the floor, on the desk. No, it's okay. I thought I'd whack it as I'm talking. I talk with my hands. unfortunately. So yes, very budget friendly way of starting your garden. Seeds may take time to germinate, they grow and mature, but they do cost a fraction of the price. So they're really good. You just have to have a little bit of patience with them. Start them a little bit earlier than you would do when you're thinking about planting your garden up. Give them time to mature before you plant them out. So it's a labour of love. It's a labour of love. That's all I can say to that one. So another benefit when you're growing your own fruit and veg as well is you know exactly how they've been grown, what's happened to them every stage of the way. You've bought the packet of seeds, you've got the compost. You know how they've been sown and grown, and if they've been treated with anything, which you don't need to treat them with anything. How they've been treated, what they come into contact with, all that sort of thing. You know their history. You know what they've gone through. Oh, my screen went funny. It's fine. So you know what they've gone through. You know the history. So that's a really good way of knowing, like, what's the word? Like traceability, if you like, for your food. If you're growing your own food, then it's really good way to know and to understand. When you buy plants from the garden centre and then plant them out in your garden, you don't know how the nursery has raised them, what they've been sprayed with to keep them healthy while they're in the nursery ready for sale, or in the garden centre ready for sale. You don't know what's happened to them. But as I say, when you're growing from seed, you know every step of the way. You will have had a hand in the process the whole way, right through to planting out, right through to picking the veg. So you can guarantee it. So it's more of a welfare thing, I suppose, if not so much like a animal hospital kind of welfare thing, but on that point of view. So seeds can also be a really great way to grow plants that you wouldn't normally be able to have access to or be able to get unless you import them or you pinch a cutting from Botanic Gardens or to that effect, which I'm not condoning by any means, but I know it can happen on occasion. Not saying anything to that one. With these special seeds that you can buy, they can take a little longer to germinate and they can need a little more care and maybe specialist growing conditions as well. But when they finally grow, when you get those seedlings appear, the achievement from that is amazing. So not only is it something that you wouldn't normally have access to buy as a plant, you've grown it yourself. So the achievement's there. The sense of like achievement and appreciation, it's good. So that's also a really good reason to try growing things from seed, because you've got wider variety of things that you can grow. That's much better. So common misconceptions. I can't talk today. It's dreadful. It gets past 5 o'clock. My brain goes to pieces. It's awful. Let me have a drink. And this is just water as well. Perhaps it shouldn't be. Maybe that'll help. So, common misconceptions when it comes to growing your seeds. There are quite a few of these, so I've found out as well when I've been asking people, just as like opinions and things. There are quite a lot of them, and I just think, good Lord, people, where do you get this nonsense from? But it does make me laugh. So I picked a few out randomly, and I thought you'd like them. So, okay, these are more of the practical, actual, realistic ones that I thought, well, actually, we need to clear this up. So, common misconceptions when it comes to growing your seeds. You need to start your seeds off exactly when the packet states or suggests. Okay, so this is nonsense to a certain extent, but it's not hard and fast. Okay, so on the back of the packet, I should have actually had a packet. I haven't got a packet in here, have I? Nope, I haven't got a packet of seeds in here. Damn it. They're outside. That's fine. So on the back of a packet, there is like a timeline, which if you've got a packet of seeds near you when you're watching this, if you're watching it live, if you've got a packet of seeds near you, try it out. There's like a timeline on the back that will tell you when you can sow your seeds inside or outside, when you can plant your seedlings out, the plants out, and usually as well it will have a harvest period on there as well, when you can harvest. So between the planting out and the harvesting. So it will give you an idea of all of those. This is just a guide. This is a guide. In case I have to say this, I shouldn't have to say this, but I do. Seeds can't actually tell the time of year. They don't have a calendar. They don't have a watch. They don't know what the time of year is. They work by soil temperature, day length as well. So these all factor in, but they can't actually tell when it's March, April, May, unless they're in the soil or it's warm enough, kind of thing. So if the soil is too cold, the seeds won't germinate. If the soil is the right temperature or warmer, so like 7 to 10 degrees or above, thereabouts, they will germinate quite happily. If the soil is too cold or too damp, as I say, they won't germinate, or they'll just eventually over time, they'll just sort of die off, they'll rot off. So having this guide on the back that says you have to sow your seeds in February to be planted out in, say, April, to be harvested June, July, August, it's a very guide-ish kind of guide. Guide-ish kind of guide. That's really good English, well done. So it's a guide. So you can base it on the temperature that it should be. If you feel like the temperatures, if you're sowing outside, for instance, if your temperature's around 10 degrees, it's consistently around 7 to 10 degrees for a good couple of weeks, you know you're okay to be sowing seeds outside. There are some seeds, such as peas and beans, you can sow outside earlier. Corn even can put up with it a bit earlier, a bit colder, but peas and beans are definitely a bit more hardy, so that's fine. You can sow them a bit colder. But if it says February, don't worry, or March, for instance, because we're heading into March. Don't worry if you think, oh no, it's 2 days to March, I can't sow them yet, it says March. If you think it's, if you're sowing in the greenhouse, you're pretty much okay, like a week either side. If it's March, you can probably go the whole length of March and sow them in April if you really wanted to, although it would set your growing season back a bit. You can start them in the middle of February if you've got a propagator that you work in the heat, or if you've got a windowsill propagator that you've got in a south-facing window. You could sow them in the middle of February and they'll be quite happy. Absolutely fine. If you're sowing outside, they might struggle a touch. If they're meant to be like middle of March, they might struggle a bit in February because it is still cold outside. Just saying. So yeah, it is a guide. You don't need to stick exactly to when it says on the packet. They're very vague in the lines of it, but it is like the month, but you don't have to stick to that. You should use your judgment a little bit. But if the outside world is cold, it's no good to plant outside. So if you'd like to extend your growing season, a heated propagator or a windowsill propagator works very well. So you can do that. Or put a plastic bag over a flagpole. That works as well. So seedlings need feeding as soon as they produce leaves. This isn't true. Because they get what they need from the soil. So as a seed starts out, let's go right back to the beginning. So a seedling doesn't need feeding, no. So seedlings take their early nutrition from the seed itself. So when you've got the seedling coming up, we've got the little seed, we've got seedling coming up like a bean, for instance. We've got seedling coming up, and it will use the bean itself, the thing you plant, the bean, or you eat. It will use that as the feed, which is fine. So the seedling will grow up, the roots will grow down. The stem will go up, the roots will go down, sorry. The bean will be there in the middle to feed the plant. The plant will draw on the like the carbohydrates, the energy, the sugars in the bean. Just knocked my camera, I can see it wobble. In the bean to feed the seedling as it's growing. Once it runs out of bean or seed, then it's going to need to draw on the nutrients that's in the soil that you've planted it in. At that point, once it gets mature, so like 3, 4, 5 sets of leaves, maybe even 6 sets of leaves, depending on what type of plant it is, that's when you're going to have to start thinking about whether it needs feeding or not. Generally speaking, you don't need to start feeding them until they start producing buds for like flowers. So start producing those. That's when it's going to really draw on the nutrients it needs. It can get everything from the soil, everything from the sun. It's going to have leaves at this point, so it's going to be able to photosynthesize. It's going to draw the energy from the sun, sugars down through the thing, go from there. So it can go from the roots, it can draw from the soil, and it can draw from the sun. So you don't need to feed them until they're starting to produce buds. Really, realistically, you don't. They should get everything they need from what's in nature. Just putting that one out there. Because actually, I got this from quite a lot of people, that you need to feed them. It's very important to have feed for your seedlings early on. And I kept saying, you do realise that could kill them. You will actually burn them if you try and feed your seedlings when they're too young. You don't need to do it. So I thought I'd put that one in there for good measure. If this is the first you're hearing of it, and you are one of the people that believes they need feeding, you aren't alone, so don't feel silly or anything. It's absolutely fine. I just needed to tell you. I needed to tell you because you don't need to. So complete waste of time. So I've lost where I am now. I got so excited about the feeding of the seedlings. I don't need to feed the seedlings. No. Planting seeds the right way up. Now, this has got some merit to it because, like bulbs have an up and a down. They have a point, they have a bud and they have a root. So I can understand where the concept comes from, but seeds aren't the same. Seeds do have an up and a down. That's kind of right. They're not really a root and a tip like they do with the bulb, but they do have an upside, like a point and one they should, an up and a down. But it doesn't matter if they don't face that way. And when a seed germinates, the roots will naturally go down and the stem will naturally go upwards for the leaves to be out into the light. They will naturally travel that way. They don't worry if you've got a bean and you've planted it upside down or on its side or flat or anything. They will still grow the same way. They'll split, the shell will split, the stem will start going up towards the light because it will travel towards the light. They will naturally do that. And the roots will naturally go downwards. They'll follow their instinct, if you like, to go downwards. There is a technical term for it, but I can't think what it is. But they will naturally go down. So no matter what way they're facing, they will always grow the right way up. So this is a very common misconception. You don't have to stress about which way up a seed is or where the top of a seed is. They will find their own way. It's absolutely fine. So you don't need to worry about that. So what do you need to do? I think that's all my common misconceptions. There's only a few there, but they were out of all the silly ones that I could find. I might have to do a video another day on the silly misconceptions for seed sowing because there are quite a lot of silly ones that I thought were funny. Plant them right way up. I've lost my notes. So what do you need to know when it comes to seed sowing at home? Let me just have a drink before I start to croak. Half a minute. So let me know in the comments if you're finding any of this entertaining. I hope you do. So seed compost. So you need to think about seed compost ideally because it is very different to multi-purpose or vegetable compost that you would normally buy for the gardens for potting up plants and things. So seed compost is a special commodity. It is lighter. Seeds need lighter compost. Hang on. Let me take my drink because I'm going to cough. I felt tickle. I didn't want to cough. She's good. So seed compost. Seeds prefer a lighter compost. Seed compost is specifically designed to support seeds. They don't have an awful lot of feed going on in there. It's very much a medium to grow in. That is about it. It has a little bit of natural feed, what you'd normally find in natural compost, but it doesn't have anything added to it. There isn't any heavy pieces of fiber or anything bulky in there to sort of damage or inhibit the growth of the seedlings, if that makes sense. Try not to cough. Hang on. No, it's gone. I've got a bit of a tickle coming on. Oh no. There we go. So they're delicate plants, seedlings, so they don't need anything hindering their growth. So that's why they need very light compost. So seed compost has no added feed, as I said. So they have the natural kind of nutrients and stuff you'd find in compost as a natural source. So they can use that when they run out of seed. So I was talking about just now, they run out of their seed to feed on. They can use what's in the seed compost. By the time they're mature enough to require needing some sort of food, more food, they will be that didn't work. They will be being potted on. So then you give them then the multi-purpose compost, which will have more feed, more fibrous material in there as well for the plants to draw from. So they still won't need feeding so much at that point, but they've got more substantial compost to sort out. So yes, so having the heavier compost, if you plant seeds in heavier compost, now I'm not saying it won't work, because even if I've run out of seed compost or haven't got any fine compost or anything like that, or medium to sow in, I have used multi-purpose compost and sieved it to pieces and sieved it to more. So I've sieved the compost and it has been okay, but heavier, thicker like multi-purpose type of compost or vegetable compost is it increases the risk of damping off. So when the seedlings grow, they with the I would say clumpiness. That's not the right word. Like the denseness of the compost holds the moisture more. The seedlings aren't big enough to draw all the moisture away. So then botrytis will set in. They will catch fungal botrytis, and they'll damp off. They'll rot off, and then you'll lose your seedlings. So this is why seed compost, where it's so light and fine, and it drains really easily. So any excess water will just drain away. If you're really concerned about damping off, you can put vermiculite on the top of the seeds as well when you've sown them. That will absorb any of the excess or sort of surface moisture as well. So that's a really good way of getting around it. But using seed compost is actually a really good idea to get into. You can use multi-purpose if you want to in civet. It does work, but using seed compost really does guarantee your seeds will stay healthy, which is good. So I've lost where I am now. Seed compost. There we go. So sowing peas and beans, giving them room to grow. So this is, I want to say, it's not a misconception, it's the wrong word, but this is something people don't sort of think about. The amount of times I've seen people sowing peas and beans in a standard seed tray, and then they don't grow right. Their roots all tangle up together. They try and tease them apart to plant them out. And it's just not practical. It's not sensible. It's not practical. When you grow peas and beans, they need they've got a very extensive root system. Their roots grow really quickly, and in relation to their stems and their leaves. So they will have a lot more roots going on before they've got out the soil. So they're going to need a deeper what's the word? Root trainer. That's the word. Or a deep tray or pot or something like that. So peas and beans need more depth than they do width. yeah. So they need more depth for the roots to go down further before the leaves start growing. So I have got root trainers. So the trays that are really deep, if you like, all the celled trays that are really deep. They're normal size cells of like inch by inch cells, but they're really deep. So like root trainers, they're really good. And I also use as well, which I find really useful for when I'm planting out to the garden, is toilet rolls. So I use toilet rolls and I put them into like a little pot, like a 2 litre or 1 litre pot. So I put like 6 toilet rolls in, and then fill the whole thing with compost, and then sow the peas or beans in there. And then the I don't know what I'm talking about today. My brain's just completely gone. And the beans will go down through. The toilet roll will become the root trainer. So they'll give them plenty of depth, keep the roots under control so they don't tangle together. And then you can plant the whole thing out, toilet roll and all, into the garden, and it'll just dissolve and add into the carbon in the ground, if you like. So it's a really good way of doing it. And it's recycling. Otherwise, the toilet rolls would only go in landfill or get burnt off or whatever. So I plant them, and then it adds to nutrition in the garden. So yes, when you're planting peas and beans, if you've done it or doing it this weekend, give them room. Give the roots room. They're going to appreciate you for it. And you'll get better plants for it as well. You won't damage the roots when you try and separate them. So, oh, hang on. I've got a flickering screen. Don't flicker screen because you always make me think it's going to crash. It's not crashing, it's fine. So, let's have a look. Where did I get to? Peas and beans. There we go. The size of the seed is important. So, and the depth as well, the planting depth. So, size of the seed suggests the height that you plant it at, or the depth you plant it at as well. So, it's kind of like with bulbs. If you've planted bulbs before in the past, if you're a bulb person, you need to plant them double their height to give them the adequate amount of depth for them to grow happily and comfortably. So double their height. Similar like this with seeds, to a certain extent. If you're planting, give an example, like a bean, courgette, squash, the bigger seeds, if you like, or pumpkin seeds, you need to ideally plant them at the same, if you not like flat where they're flat seeds, but like the sides of them widthways. If you do that again, so plant them quite deep, that helps. With beans, it's easier to, you just push them down to the size of the bean in the soil. I'm not explaining this very well, but yeah. So the size of the bean, the size of the seed, it dictates how deep they need to be sown. So if you've got a bean or courgette or squash, they need to be sown deeper than if you have something like feverfew, even marigold seeds to a certain extent, something quite fine and small. They don't need a lot of covering at all. So they're small dust-like seeds, if you like, poppies and things like that. They don't need covering at all. They can just be surface sown. If you're worried about, as I said, about damping off, like we spoke about just now with the seed compost and things, you can put vermiculite over the top. That'll be fine because that's light enough not to affect them. But they really don't want to be covered at all. They just like to be surface sown because in nature, what they would do is the wind would carry them and they would just land where they do. Whereas the larger seeds would be heavier when they would land, or wherever birds takes them somewhere or whatever, they would land and then they would naturally end up buried by some force because they're a heavier seed. So ideally, the smaller the size of the seed dictates on how much you need to cover them. For a very small dust-like seed, don't cover them at all. If it's a larger seed, use the size of the seed as a guide as to how deep they need to go, if that's any help to you. So that's quite an important one to know because you can, the larger seeds, if you plant them too close to the surface, I know what I'm trying to say. If you plant them too close to the surface, they will end up growing themselves out the ground. The roots will come down and push themselves out the compost, which is no good. So having them down a bit further will help them to establish, get the root system going, and then the stems will come up and there'll be healthier seedlings for it. As I say, you don't really want to sit a bean on the surface because it just won't, the roots won't take. They'll try, they'll grow, they'll do their utmost to grow regardless of where they are. But it's better to have them sown properly. So yes, use the size as a guide. So before you get worried about taking notes or anything, I will put these in a post in the Facebook group. I'll put it in the membership as well for you as well. So if you're watching for the membership, I'll put the posts. I'll put the information as posts there for you as well. So you can check that out. Obviously, you'll have this to watch back if you want to watch it on replay, so you can catch back up. And yes, and if you are, oh, my phone's going off. Go away. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll put it into the community for you as well. So that's fine. If you're on YouTube or if you're in the other Facebook group, can't see if anybody's watching from there, so that's fine. I think they are. If you'd like to join the membership, I will leave a link in the description of this video as well. So you can join whenever you like. $3.99 membership for the Natural Gardeners membership. Doors are open now to invite in new members. So if you'd like to join, look out for the link later on. So that little segue gone. Size of plants, size of seeds, watering. Okay. So it is important when you're sowing seeds it's important to make sure your compost doesn't dry out. As we were talking about damping off earlier, it's also very important that the compost is free draining and it doesn't stay damp too long or waterlogged. So it's very important to, if you are, for example, if you're using heavier compost or you are sowing into pots and then sitting them in a tray in a propagator, make sure that they aren't flat to the floor so they can't drain. A lot of pots actually have got indents underneath, so their drainage holes are actually lifted so they drain naturally quite easily. But some of the old style pots, they're flat bottomed. They've got holes, but they're flat bottomed. So once you sit them on the ground, the holes are blocked, so they don't drain. But it's really important to just check that out. So watering is an important thing to understand about seedlings, not to overwater them, but you can't let the compost really dry out because as soon as they dry out, the seeds won't germinate. If the seedlings have already started growing and the compost dries out, the roots will dry out with it, and then the roots will get damaged. Seedlings won't be, I want to say, tolerant enough, won't be mature enough, big enough to be able to repair the roots. So then they will die. It'll be a quick process. You just won't see the seedlings again. So that's it. So if you make sure that the compost, you can spritz it every now and with a sprayer or something like that so that it stays damp, but it doesn't dry out, but it doesn't stay damp too long as well. That's really, it's quite a fine line, but you understand when you see, make sure it doesn't get a little waterlogged. because otherwise seedlings will damp off. So it's very important. A really good way of doing this, if you've got a propagator, the lid will condensate. So if you close the vents just a smidge, the condensation will keep everything quite nice and moist inside. So it's really good. If you are using a pot in like a windowsill, or if you've got like a windowsill propagator, putting a plastic bag over the top of the pot and tying it with a piece of string or elastic band, that will create a nice bit of condensation as well inside. That will keep the compost moist, but not too sort of damp, and it will keep it keep everything quite happy inside. So, and it'll keep in all the warmth as well. So that's a really good way of doing it, and so the plants won't damp off. Again, you can use vermiculite as well. That'll prevent damping off. But just try not to overwater your seedlings if you can help it. Keep an eye on them. And usually, if you can see that the soil on top is dry, if you kind of scrape off the surface, or usually like up to your first knuckle, if you like, that's where usually, if it's damp, you're okay. If it's dry, then you can probably get away with watering them. You're fine. So, how can you improve germination? That was the last one of the what you need to know is watering. Yes. Okay. So how can you improve germination? If your seeds haven't been very successful in the past, it can knock your confidence when you're trying to grow them. But how can you ensure that they will germinate each year, or you'll get a better germination rate than you would have done normally? So yes. So how do you improve this? There are quite a few ways that you can do this, but I picked a few out which are quite easy. Good to know ones. So starting your seeds inside under cover, like the propagator, or I just said about a plastic bag over the top of a pot, like with elastic band or string, sitting in the sun. This can really help improve germination. So heat on its own, heat and light helps improve germination. So the light doesn't really come into it until you get seedling, but the heat will help to germinate the seed. To say, what at the beginning I said about seeds can't tell the time of year, they go by soil temperature. So if the soil's not warm enough, it will not germinate. You keep the heat in the soil, it automatically triggers germination, which is good. So heat really does help. So as I say, they lie dormant until the soil temperature increases. So they are waiting for that moment. Another good way to start your seeds to ensure germination is to soak them as well. So you soak them for 24 hours before sowing. You don't really want to soak them for longer than 24 hours because they'll start to rot. But soaking for 24 hours, this can work in two ways. One, it can soften the shell of the seed, which works best for like larger seeds as well, because they can sometimes need a bit of help. So it can soften the shell of the seed. This will then the moisture will get through to the embryo inside the seed, triggering germination, which is good. The seed will remain dormant until it feels like there is enough moisture in the soil for it to survive. So when you soak the seed, it will ensure the seed is damp. This will trigger germination as well, which is good. So soaking your seeds for 24 hours can help. This is better, as I say, for larger seeds. You don't really need to soak the small or like dust-like seeds. Pretty much good for germination for those. They don't need a lot of help. Really, I think it's in their nature just to spread like wildfire. So they don't need a lot of help. Poppy seeds, anything like that, very good. Companion seeds, things like that, they're okay. You don't need a lot of help with those. But the larger seeds, they're the ones you can struggle with. So they're the ones that you might need to soak. The other week, I think it was back in January, I think, we talked about seed testing to check the viability of your seeds. Now, the seed soak test is a really good example of doing this, because you soak them and then you'll see the seeds germinating in the on the tissue. So you can see which ones and how viable the seeds that you've saved from like the year before are. But the seed soak test is a really good example of this method, if you like. So go back and watch that. I'll try and link that actually, because that would be quite useful for today's one as like a crossover. So I'll try and link that in the description. I'll go and find it after this and I'll link it in the description so you can check that out as well. So that's the methods to work out sort of viability of your seeds that you saved the year before, to see how well they're going to germinate this year. To know if they're any good, want to keep them or not. And that's not just for seeds that you've saved, but seeds that so you've opened a seed packet last year or the year before and you're not sure if they're still any good. You can do that as well. Okay, some seeds in the wild need a bit of a rough surface before they can actually germinate. This is called scarification. If you want a technical term for it, scarification. It's quite simple. Again, this is mainly larger seeds and beans, peas, beans, that kind of thing. But this, we get a bit of context in. So in nature, they would have fallen out their pods, or their pods they might have been eaten, or whatever. The pods fallen off the plant, and they would have rolled about on the ground. It's usually like a stony ground, that sort of thing. But they would rub around, and then that would wear away a little bit of the seed shell. So to mimic this, you can use. So I've completely lost my notes. To mimic this, you can use sandpaper as well, or if you've got a nail file, emery board, that kind of thing. This works really well. Just to lightly scratch away at the surface. You don't have to go too drastic. You don't have to file the whole seed outer away, but just file away a little bit on the outside, and this will allow moisture to seep in through the shell. And then again, like we were saying just now about like soaking things, this will trigger germination. It'll get through to the embryo inside the shell, inside the seed. I know what I mean. And it will trigger germination. So some shells are quite hard, and they do need this scarification to actually work. But this works just as well if you soak them as well. So the seed outer will soften, get into the seed, trigger germination that way. It's all about getting the moisture inside. If the seed doesn't think there's enough moisture there for it to survive, it won't germinate. If the soil's not warm enough, it won't germinate. It's all about that. So the other thing I was going to say as well, not that it's really relevant, but I'm going to say anyway, some seeds in Africa and Australia and places like that, where bushfires are quite common, they actually require heat and fire and smoke to trigger germination as well. So if you ever go and if you ever get seeds from Africa, Australia, or anything like that, if you, import them or buy them or whatever, you may well have to set them fire before they'll germinate. Just saying. Just a useless one for you there. Never had to do that myself, mind. Soaking usually does the job if they're really, really awkward, but I've never really had that problem, so it's fine. Yes. So there, I'm just making sure I've covered all of the ones to help germination. I think I have. Yes, so there are a lot of different ideas there for you to improve germination. As I say, I will list them wherever I can, in the group, on YouTube, and in the membership, so you can catch up on those wherever you're watching from today. So it all boils down to, as I said, the heat, moisture, and light as well. So as long as you've got the correct conditions, your seeds will germinate. Simples. But heat is usually the biggest definer. The soil isn't warm enough. If it's too dry, they won't germinate. So keep an eye on them. Seeds usually take from 3 days to 6 weeks to germinate, so giving them time as well. Don't try and expect them to germinate within like I don't know, the next day. Whatever, you've sown them one evening and they're expecting to be little green shoots coming up the next day. It doesn't work. Some things will grow, like cress is very good, but like 3 days, then you'll start to see little green shoots. Don't expect that from all the seeds. Some seeds can take up to 6 weeks before you see any signs at all from them. So be patient with them as well. It's very important. Patience is a virtue. We should all have more of it, but we don't. So if you follow this, you can't really go wrong. So there we go. Okay, so I think this is it. I can't see any more of my notes on there. So that is it for the seed, things to know about your seeds and sowing seeds and how to improve germination. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have taken anything of value away from today, obviously you're welcome. And if you can give me a thumbs up from wherever you're watching from today, I'd appreciate it, because it lets me know that I'm obviously producing the right stuff for you guys, so you know and you like it and everything. So give us a thumbs up. If you're watching from YouTube, try not to beat my microphone up. If you're watching from YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up, as I say. It helps the channel. It helps me. It helps me know I'm obviously talking to the right people and doing the right things. So always appreciated. So next week we have a special. So next week we are joined by Caroline Scott from Abundant Edible Gardens. She's going to be talking to us about creating a food forest in your garden at home. So really exciting. So she'll be joining us with Fuller Live. So we 2 of us on next week. So I hope you enjoy that. Look out for my thumbnail for that one on Sunday. So that will be scheduled and everything ready on Sunday. So look out for that. I don't think there's anything else. If there's any questions, we got any questions? Let me have a look. No. Okay, perfect. So if you have any questions, if you're watching, if you're catching on replay, give me a hashtag replay, say hello, all the things. If you've got any questions, post as you go. I will pick them up as I see them and I'll answer them as quickly as I can. So you're not hanging around, whatever. But yes, if you've got any questions, please feel free to comment in whichever platform you're watching from. And I will catch you next week with Caroline. So have a wonderful day, evening, week, and I'll see you then. That's it. I don't think there's anything else. No. Fabulous. Have a great day and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.